Right, so yeah, Vicky and I are from Runshaw College in Lancashire, where we have got about 450 GCSE and pre-GCSE learners. And our project for this year, our question was, what impact do interventions based on the Vespa mindset model have on GCSE Maths Resit students? So first of all, why mindset? Well, I think we're all familiar with the main reasons that our students, GCSE Maths Resit students particularly, they've been recognised to have quite a fixed mindset, to not be particularly organised, and particularly something that we have found in our experiences, they're just no confidence in their own ability, which they don't always associate with a lack of effort that they're putting in. There are studies that show that even a one-time mindset intervention can have a positive impact on student outcomes. And a lot of the literature that we were reading was all to do with the secondary education sector. There wasn't an awful lot that we could find from FE, so we really wanted to contribute to that gap in the literature as well. The Vespa model is something that has previously been used in our setting, mainly within the pastoral curriculum, so that was also something that we wanted to build on. So what is the Vespa model? Well, it was developed by Steve Oakes and Martin Griffin over the course of 8 years. And it's all about developing students' non-cognitive skills to help them to also make academic progress. And they identified 5 characteristics that they suggest students require in order to be successful. And Vespa is actually an acronym for vision, effort, systems, practice, and attitude. And successful students generally score highly in each of these aspects. So we made use of their online portal. Their online portal provides a questionnaire where students answer 28 questions on the various different mindset aspects and are given a score out of 10 for each of those characteristics. And our students did that at the start of the year, and they did it at the end of the research period as well, so we could analyse that and see if and what changes had happened. We also use their books, and each of their books that you can see there on the slide provides a set of 40 activities which are targeted specifically at developing these 5 characteristics. And those activities are suitable for use either on a one-to-one basis or in a group setting within the classroom. And we did a combination of those, as you'll see in a minute.
So we thought we'd give you a bit of a taste of the Vespa Questionnaire. So if you've got a pen and some paper, what I'd like you to do is just rate each statement based on how much you agree that it describes you. So we're going to see 5 statements coming up now. The first one is, no matter who you are, you can change your intelligence a lot. So 5 is if you strongly agree, down to 1 if you strongly disagree that that is not you. The second one is, I have a positive view of myself. Next one is, I am confident in my academic ability. Next is, I strive to achieve the goals I set for myself. And the last one is, I'm happy to ask questions in front of a group. And then we thought we'd get you to do some maths. So could you please work out your mean score and just round it to the nearest whole number? And this will give you your Vespa score. So when our students do this on the portal, it automatically gives them a score out of 10 for each aspect and also an overall score. And it generates them a bit of a personality report to tell them about how they think. So this is the report for each of the scores. So you can find your score and see if you think it describes you.
These are specifically for the attitude aspect of the Vespa.
Thank you.
I hope that's enough time for you to have a quick read.
Yes, so after our students completed the Vespa questionnaire and got their report, we asked them to write a little reflection about what they thought of the results of that report. And we did this on Microsoft Forms, and we gave them some prompt questions. So we asked them how accurate they thought it was, and 85% of the students thought that it was very accurate. We only had 9 out of 108 responses who agreed to let us share as part of the research, who said that they didn't think it described them. And as we know, sometimes 16 to 19-year-olds, there can be maybe a bit of self-denial there. We also asked them what they would like to improve. And I think that sometimes research students can get a bit of an attitude of not caring, not being bothered if they get better or not. But we know as their teachers that actually they do, they're just afraid of failure, they have low confidence, and this really came through in the responses about what they wanted to improve. A lot of them mentioned attitude or wanted to be more confident or less anxious as well, and just wanting to have more of a clue really about how to revise and things like that.
So what we planned to do following the initial questionnaires were to have 2 different pathways, and one of those was one-to-one coaching. So Vicky and myself did do the one-to-one coaching with some of our students, and the initial plan was to identify the students who had the lower scores on their Vespa questionnaire, who may not necessarily stand out because of academic weakness or anything like that, but clearly had some areas for development within their mindset. And we were going to target them for fortnightly coaching sessions. The Vespa report gives you some suggested activities that you can start with to start to address the weaker aspects of their mindset. And then we were going to create a bespoke programme following on from that based on their individual needs. We also incorporated Vespa activities within the scheme of work. So there were about 300 students in classes that were taking part in these activities. We identified ones that we particularly thought were appropriate to our students, looking at their questionnaire results from the selection of 80 activities that we had available to us. And we asked teachers to deliver at least 5 of those 8 activities at certain points throughout the year as part of the scheme of work. We did also have a control group. We wanted something to be able to measure this against, with it being such a new intervention. So there were 66 students that didn't participate in any of the one-to-one coaching or activities within the scheme of work, but they did still complete the questionnaire at the beginning and the end of the research period, so that we had a bit of a comparison there with the main cohort. However, that was what we planned, and then COVID hit, as we know, and it did change our plans quite significantly in some cases. So initially we had about 20 to 30 students identified to take part in the coaching sessions following the Christmas break, but then we immediately went into the national lockdown, and instead we didn't think it was appropriate to kind of make them come and meet us online and take part in these unfamiliar sessions given the climate that we were in at that time. So instead we made a little promotional video that described what the sessions were, what they were going to involve, and we particularly tried to target how we could help them in this period of lockdown and how we could help them with their mindset. And instead we asked them to volunteer to take part if they thought it was something they would benefit from. And so we ended up with 6 students volunteering to take part in the one-to-one coaching sessions, which did help in some ways because it did mean that we could give them weekly sessions rather than the originally planned fortnightly and get to know them a little bit better. We also adapted the activities that were due to be taking place in class. So in some cases, we just adapted them for online delivery rather than in-person delivery. But we did think that some of the practice activities, particularly that were focusing on revision techniques and things like that, weren't particularly appropriate or motivating, given that we'd just been announced that the exams weren't going to happen anymore. So we tried to give it a bit more of a mindset and positive mindset in lockdown sort of feel to the activities that we were delivering.
So what did we find? In the table, you can see the average Vespa scores. So these were scores out of 10, an average for the students who took part. We did have some issues with things like Wi-Fi and problems with the online platform, as well as a small outbreak of the Delta variant, which meant we had an extra week of lockdown for our college. So it was extra online learning. And we didn't get as many responses as we'd hoped to the second questionnaire. We got over 300 for the first questionnaire. But when we compared the average scores for the whole cohort and the ones who'd done both questionnaires, we're quite confident that they are representative of the whole students who did take part. So in green, we've got effort, systems and attitude, as well as the overall scores, which increased for our main cohort of students versus the control group. And the ones that went down were vision and practice. And we do have a couple of theories about why those things went down. Vision, you know, students, they've had less opportunities for things like work experience, apprenticeships. I think due to online learning, in my classes, I've heard a lot more students saying they weren't enjoying their courses that they were on. So we think that might have had an effect on that. And the online platform changed some of the questions on the Vespa questionnaire between the first cycle and the second cycle. Some of these were quite small changes to make the questions clearer, like removing double negatives. But questions relating to practice, for example, originally there was a question that said, did you use mind maps or diagrams to help you revise? And this was replaced with, do you teach someone else a topic to help you revise? Which is very different levels for our students. So we do think that that had an effect, unfortunately, on some of those results. You may also look at them and think that those increases aren't really a lot, you know, plus 0.2, plus 0.3, but when you compare them to how the control group has gone down, and you consider the year that these students have been through, we're quite happy that, you know, these students haven't gone down in more places, really. We do think that it did have some effect. The other things, we also asked our students to complete an end of year survey, just asking them about what they thought of the activities, you know, which their favourites were, what they liked, what they didn't, and also how they were feeling at the end of the year. And the common themes that came up were saying that they felt they had more confidence, they felt more organised, and that they were more willing to have a go at questions that they maybe wouldn't have previously. Our one-to-one coaching students, we conducted some interviews with them, and they also gave us evidence in these themes of having more confidence and feeling more organised. And they also extended this, so it wasn't just within the maths classroom, although they said in the classroom they were happier to ask for help and happier to answer questions there. They also related it to outside as well. So in their part-time jobs and things like one of our students did police cadets, just having this extra confidence. And those one-to-one students did attribute that directly to the coaching students and the activities, the strategies that they learned with us. As Kate said earlier, we had to change some of the activities that we did with moving online. We'd originally planned to do a lot on revision techniques, and because of our previous experience of lockdown, we thought that we'd change that with some more motivational stuff and, you know, keeping them going. In our teacher focus group, I think initially teachers were a bit concerned about delivering these things within lessons, given all the content that we have to deliver and it cutting into their lesson time, but they were very positive about the effects they think this had about developing their relationships with the students and also giving students tools to kind of study skills and things like that. And they did say that they want us to continue with these activities in the future. And we also had a bit of an unexpected finding. So these are 3 questions which were on our end of year survey. And I think there have been a lot of reports about how COVID and lockdown has had a negative impact on our students' mental health, well-being and their mindset. This is reflected in our student survey, with more than half of them saying that they felt COVID and lockdown had had a negative impact on their mindset. But in that same survey, those same students, when asked if they'd noticed a change in their mindset in maths or outside of the maths classroom, 61% for both of those said yes a lot. So luckily, because obviously, yes, a lot could be positive or negative here, we looked at the responses and the answers the students had given, and this was where they talked about having more confidence, feeling more organised, more in control. So it did seem that they were taking that as a positive question. And so we found this really interesting, that although generally they seemed to think, you know, COVID and lockdown had had this negative impact, they had seen this positive impact in maths and, you know, other areas, that some of them did directly relate it to some of the activities, with it being a survey on these activities. So that was really interesting for us to find.
So finally, moving forward with this project then, we are going to continue next year. We are definitely going to continue to incorporate those Vespa mindset activities within our GCSE maths scheme of work. We are not going to have a control group next year, because not only were there positive comparisons between the actual mindset questionnaire scores for both groups, but the early indications are that the impact on their achievement has actually been pretty huge. There is a significant difference between the tag grades for the control group compared with the rest of the cohort. And you will hopefully be able to see those exact figures in the report once they're validated in August. We are going to do the questionnaire earlier in the year next year, so that we can identify students earlier. Hopefully we won't have those technical issues that Vicky was talking about, and we can start the coaching after October half term rather than after Christmas, and hit more students, maybe slightly less frequently. We have got a network partner college, Blackpool and Lafayette, are on board for next year. They are going to be participating in both aspects. They're going to incorporate the activities in the scheme of work, and they're going to coach some of their students as well. And we are going to make sure that we're all thoroughly well trained up to do that next academic year. And we do want to look at just that interesting finding that Vicky pointed out at the end there about the other aspects that might influence students' mindset and attitude as well, with noting that difference between the two questions in our final survey. Thank you very much.
Thank you.